Hey guys, today's story is a little different. I was at my promotion party, the rooftop bar aglow with string lights, the city skyline sparkling, the clink of champagne glasses mingling with laughter and jazz. My colleagues toasted my rise to creative director, their cheers warm, but then my boss, Carla, pulled me aside, her smile tight, and said, "You're out, Natalie. We're restructuring." The words hit like a cold gust, stealing the air from the night, my heart plummeting as the betrayal sank in. I'd spent a decade building our agency's brand, driving $10 million in annual campaigns, only to be fired in front of everyone at my own celebration. My name's Natalie Hayes, 39, a marketing strategist who's poured her soul into this firm. To be humiliated, my career erased in a moment of supposed triumph, was a wound that burned deeper than I could name. And if you think karma's slow, wait until you hear this. So, before you get pulled in, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually believe that betrayal always comes back around. Drop a comment, where are you watching from, and have you ever had someone betray your trust? Now sit back, let the room go quiet, and let me tell you how it really went down. The rooftop was a blur of festive faces, but Carla's words echoed, a cold refrain that drowned out the music. She stood by the bar, her tailored suit sharp, her eyes avoiding mine as she handed me a severance letter, its paper crisp, impersonal. My team's chatter faded, their smiles frozen as they caught the tension, the party's warmth draining like spilled wine. I'd given 10 years to this agency, late nights crafting campaigns, winning clients like Nike and Pepsi, turning a small firm into a creative powerhouse. Yet, in one sentence, Carla, woman I'd mentored, whose career I'd boosted, cast me out, citing restructuring with no explanation, no gratitude. My chest tightened, rage and shock colliding like a storm, but I kept my face composed, my hand steady on the letter, nails pressing into my palms to anchor me. I met Carla's gaze, her unease flickering, a crack in her polished facade, but she pressed on, mentioning a new vision led by a junior exec, someone I'd trained. The subtext was clear, I was too influential, too entrenched, a threat to her control. I thought of the past few months, her curt emails, her private meetings with the board, the subtle shift in how my pitches were sidelined. The signs had been there, faint but persistent, like static before a lightning strike, and I'd ignored them, trusting my track record would shield me. Now, her public firing was a power play, a move to erase my legacy and claim it as her own, humiliating me at my peak. My first instinct was to confront her, to list every campaign I'd won, every client I'd secured, every dollar I'd brought in. But a scene would only feed her narrative, painting me as the bitter director she wanted others to see, a role I refused to play. I folded the letter, my movements deliberate, and slipped it into my purse, the soft clink of my keys a quiet defiance. "I'll go," I said, my voice steady, almost serene, though my heart pounded like a war drum. Carla's relief was palpable, a slight exhale betraying her tension, but I didn't look back as I walked through the party, weaving past stunned colleagues, their whispers trailing me like a wake. The elevator doors closed, the hum of descent a moment of stillness, and I let the betrayal settle, my mind racing, piecing together a response. Carla thought she'd won, that her swift cut would silence me at my own celebration. She'd forgotten who I was, a strategist who didn't just build brands but reshaped markets, a woman who turned setbacks into strikes. In my car, parked in the garage's dim light, I sat still, the engine off, the city's pulse a faint thrum beyond the concrete walls. My hands gripped the wheel, not from fear, but from a resolve taking root like steel forged in fire. I'd built this agency, but Carla had rewritten me as expendable, a role I refused to accept. My anger cooled, shifting into something precise, unyielding, strategy. I wasn't fighting for my job, I was fighting for my worth, my legacy, a truth she couldn't erase. A memory sparked. I'd secured our top 5 clients $8 million in contracts through personal relationships, pitches I'd crafted, trust I'd earned. Those weren't just accounts, they were my leverage, a network Carla didn't fully control. I pulled out my phone, texting Mia, my closest ally and a PR consultant who knew my value. Her reply was instant. "She did what?" "Call me." Her words were a spark, a hint of the power I still held, a truth Carla would soon face. I started the car, the engine's hum a vow, the skyline fading as I drove. Carla's betrayal was her choice, my response would be her reckoning. Some firings don't just end a career, they ignite a fire that shuts the whole show down. The city's neon pulse flickered through my car windows as I drove home from the rooftop bar. Carla's "You're out," Natalie, still searing like a fresh wound. Her public firing at my promotion party, masked as a restructuring, had been a calculated betrayal, stripping away a decade of my work and $10 million in campaigns I'd driven for the agency. But my calm exit, letter in hand, was the first step in uncovering a truth that could shift the ground beneath her. I held the keys to our top 5 clients' $8 million in contracts built on relationships I'd forged, trust I'd earned. Those weren't just accounts, they were my leverage, a power Carla had overlooked in her rush to erase me. My hands were steady on the wheel, the engine's hum a quiet vow, my mind a sharpened blade ready to confirm my influence and wield it against her. I wasn't fighting for my job, I was fighting for my legacy, and I'd start by unearthing my hidden control. I reached my apartment, the silence broken by the soft clink of my keys on the counter, the living room dim under a single lamp's glow. I sat at my desk, opening my laptop, its screen casting a stark light over a clutter of campaign briefs and client emails, relics of my tenure as creative director. My first task was to map my influence, buried in contracts, pitch decks, and correspondence. I pulled up my client files, scanning names Nike, Pepsi, Adobe, 2 others, each a bond forged through late-night strategy sessions and award-winning campaigns. I'd won their trust, delivering $8 million in annual contracts, a fact Carla had ignored in her power play. My pulse quickened, a quiet thrill at the leverage I held, but I needed to verify their loyalty. Clients were pragmatic, and Carla's charm could sway them if she claimed my work. I logged into my work email, still active, and checked recent threads, my access a small victory she hadn't yet revoked. I opened an email from Nike's CMO, Lisa Tran, the lead client with a $3 million contract, her trust in me sealed through a Super Bowl ad I'd pitched. A message from last week stood out, her tone warm, "Natalie, your vision's why we're here." I saved it, a spark of confirmation, but doubt crept in. Clients were loyal to results, not sentiment, and Carla might spin my exit as a strategic shift. I needed more than goodwill, proof of my impact. I pulled up campaign reports, my fingers racing across the keyboard, analytics showing $10 million in revenue tied to my ads, my creative direction, my client relationships. The numbers were my armor, a truth she couldn't rewrite, but a conflict-stirred resolve clashed with a pang of self-betrayal. I'd given everything to this agency, mentoring Carla, building her stage, only to be blindsided by her ambition. Had my trust in her been my own misstep? I stood, pacing the room, the hardwood cool beneath my bare feet, the city's hum a faint pulse beyond the window. My mind churned, piecing together the implications of my leverage. Those clients weren't just contracts, they were my allies, their trust a currency Carla couldn't match. I thought of her tight smile at the party, her rush to replace me with a junior exec, her assumption my relationships would transfer seamlessly. The realization was a quiet power, a shift that steadied my hands, but the weight of my next move pressed in. Pulling the clients would cripple the agency, a legacy I'd built with my own sweat, threatening colleagues I'd led. Was I ready to burn it down for justice, to risk my reputation for her downfall? The conflict was a shadow, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the strategy forming like a gathering storm. I sat back down, opening my call log to confirm recent talks with Lisa, who'd praised my latest Pepsi campaign. Her voicemail, still saved, was a weapon I'd used to remind her where loyalty lay. "Natalie, you're our creative heart." I drafted a list of the 5 clients, their contracts, their ties to me, each name a brick in my counterstrike. I also found a board memo, buried in a shared drive, outlining Carla's new vision weeks before my firing, proof she'd planned this betrayal. The evidence was a blade, sharpening my focus, a reminder that I'd built this agency's brand, not her. I texted Mia, my PR consultant friend, to brief her further. Her reply was swift, "She's done, Nat." Let's meet. Her support was a lifeline, easing the isolation of Carla's sting, but it deepened my conflict. This wasn't just about her, it was about an agency I'd poured my life into, now at risk by my own hand. I stood at my window, the skyline a constellation of ambition, my reflection a woman ready to fight. My plan was taking shape: confirm client loyalty, strategize with Mia, and pull the contracts to a new venture, shutting down Carla's agency. She thought she'd silenced me at my own party, but I held the strings to her empire. My resolve was a flame, burning bright, unquenched by doubt. I returned to my desk, my dossier growing, each piece a step toward justice. Carla's firing was her misstep, my response would be her downfall. I opened my notebook, jotting the first steps: calls to Lisa, Pepsi's VP, a meeting with Mia ready to wield my hidden leverage. Some betrayals don't just wound you, they hand you the keys to burn the stage down. The morning light sliced through my apartment's windows, casting a stark glow across the living room, now a war room littered with campaign reports and client emails, proof of my influence over the agency's $8 million in contracts with 5 key clients. Carla's firing at my promotion party year out, Natalie, had been a calculated betrayal, but uncovering my leverage, built through years of trust with Nike, Pepsi, and others, had armed me with a weapon to shut her empire down. Now, I needed allies, loyal confidants who'd help me pull those clients, a move that would cripple the agency and expose her misstep. Mia's PR expertise was a spark, but I needed more: people who knew the agency's inner workings, who'd seen my campaigns, who could fortify my strategy to reclaim my legacy. My coffee was cold, its bitter scent lingering as I reached for my phone, my fingers deliberate, my heart a steady forge ready to assemble a team that would make Carla's betrayal burn. My first call was to Mia, my PR consultant friend, whose media savvy had amplified my campaigns. I'd briefed her last night, but now I laid out the full plan: Carla's public firing, my relationships with the clients, and my intent to pull their contracts, leaving the agency gutted. "This is a masterstroke, Nat," she said, her voice alight with strategy. "I'll draft a narrative to frame their exit and reach out to Lisa Tran at Nike." Her commitment was a flame, igniting my confidence, but it also stirred a conflict. Gratitude for her loyalty clashed with guilt for pulling her into a corporate vendetta. I'd kept my struggles with Carla private, even from Mia, out of loyalty to the agency I'd built. That loyalty was gone, but the weight of involving others in my fight pressed heavily, a reminder of the empire I might destroy. Next, I contacted Javier, my former deputy and a media planner who'd executed my campaigns, his insight into client dynamics unmatched. I called him, my voice calm but urgent, explaining Carla's betrayal, my leverage, and my plan to orchestrate a client exodus. "She's insane," he said, his tone fierce. "Those clients trust you, not her." "I'm in." He offered to contact Pepsi's VP and Adobe's marketing lead, ensuring their alignment, and to pull campaign data to strengthen our case. His trust was a brick in my foundation, but the responsibility of leading this strike grew heavier. This was my wound, my battle, and while their support was vital, I couldn't lean on them forever. The conflict was a quiet tension, but I channeled it into action, focusing on the strategy taking shape like a storm rolling in. We met at my apartment, transforming the living room into a command center, the air thick with the rustle of analytics reports and the clink of coffee mugs. I spread out my dossier: client emails, campaign reports showing $10 million in revenue, a board memo proving Carla's premeditated firing, each piece a weapon. Mia reviewed her narrative draft, suggesting we frame the client exits as a strategic realignment to protect their brands, pitching it to media contacts for maximum impact. Javier shared pitch decks, noting key meetings where I'd won client trust, offering to back my calls with data. "They'll follow you," he said, his eyes steady. Their expertise was a tapestry, weaving my plan into something unassailable, but I felt the pressure of orchestration. This wasn't just about exposing Carla, it was about proving I could dismantle her empire without losing myself. We strategized over lunch, the city's hum a faint pulse beyond the window. Mia proposed timing the client outreach for maximum effect, coordinating contract terminations to hit Carla simultaneously, ensuring she'd face a unified front. Javier suggested drafting a joint client statement, citing leadership instability, to justify their exit, a move that would shield our motives while amplifying the blow. I outlined my role, leading calls with Lisa at Nike, Pepsi's VP, and Adobe's lead, coordinating with the others, and preparing a press leak to frame the narrative. The plan was precise, but doubt crept in. Was I destroying the agency I'd built, risking my colleagues' jobs for vengeance? The conflict was raw. Part of me still cherished the team, the campaigns, the legacy I'd crafted. I thought of Carla's smug dismissal, her board's complicity, their assumption I'd fade. They'd erased me, and that fueled my resolve to strike back. I stood, clearing plates, my movements deliberate, a quiet power in my focus. Mia watched me, her PR instincts softening. "You're not just fighting for you," she said. "You're fighting for what's right." Her words were a beacon, slicing through my doubt, reaffirming my purpose. We wrapped up, Mia and Javier promising to follow through narrative drafts, client outreach while I prepared for Lisa. I sat back down, my dossier growing, each piece a step toward justice. The skyline glittered outside, a reminder of what I'd built: campaigns launched, brands reshaped, a life of impact. Carla thought she'd silenced me, but I held the strings to her empire. My resolve was a flame, unquenched by fear. I opened my notebook, refining the client scripts, ready to wield my alliances. Carla's firing was her misstep, my response would be her downfall. I closed my laptop, the screen fading, and stood in the quiet, the city's rhythm a heartbeat. My fight wasn't over, but its purpose was clear: to shut it down, not just reclaim my place. Some betrayals don't just spark a fight, they hand you the power to end the show. The city's midday pulse thrummed outside my apartment, its skyline a silent witness as I prepared to unleash the full weight of my strategy against Carla's betrayal. Her firing at my promotion party year out, Natalie, had been a calculated move to erase my decade of work and $10 million in campaigns, but my dossier, brimming with proof of my influence over $8 million in client contracts, was a weapon primed to shut her agency down. With Mia and Javier's support, my plan to pull Nike, Pepsi, Adobe, and 2 other clients was set, a strike to cripple her empire and expose her misstep. Today, I'd execute that reversal, contacting Lisa Tran, Pepsi's VP, and Adobe's lead to terminate their contracts, halting the agency's operations. I'd confirmed their loyalty yesterday, their trust in me a blade she couldn't counter. I sat at my desk, my laptop glowing with call scripts and campaign data, my phone charged for the morning's work. I wore a tailored blazer, my reflection in the window calm but unyielding, my heart a steady drumbeat marching toward justice. I started with Lisa at Nike, the lead client with a $3 million contract, her trust in me forged through a Super Bowl ad that had skyrocketed her brand. I called her, the city's hum a faint pulse beyond my window, my voice calm but deliberate. I laid out Carla's firing, framing it as a reckless move that jeopardized the agency's stability, citing my $10 million in revenue and her betrayal at my own party. "You backed me, Lisa," I said, my tone resonant. "Without me, the agency's a shell." Her pause was brief, then her voice firm: "We're out, Natalie. I'll terminate our contract by noon." Her commitment was a spark, igniting my resolve, but a conflict-stirred triumph clashed with a pang of loss. I'd built this agency, its campaigns my creation, and now I was dismantling it. The cost wasn't just Carla's, it was a legacy I'd poured my life into, colleagues I'd led now facing uncertainty. I pushed the ache aside, focusing on the next call, my resolve a quiet power anchoring me. Pepsi's VP, Marcus Reed, was next, his $2.5 million contract sealed through a viral campaign I'd pitched. I dialed, my fingers steady, the sun's glare a backdrop to my words. I detailed Carla's betrayal, emphasizing the agency's reliance on my creative direction, my client relationships. "She can't match my track record," I said, my voice even but piercing. Marcus's response was swift: "We're pulling our contract. You're the reason we stayed." His words were a brick in my counterstrike, but the conflict deepened. Each termination was a blow to the agency I'd loved, the team I'd mentored, now at risk because of my move. I thought of my colleagues' stunned faces at the party, unaware of Carla's plan, caught in the fallout. Was I punishing them for her ambition? The tension was a shadow, but I pressed on, calling Adobe's lead and the two smaller clients, each conversation echoing the first shock, then loyalty, then commitment to terminate $8 million in total contracts. By 1 p.m., all 5 clients had pledged to pull their deals, their termination emails to Carla drafted, set to land by afternoon. Mia joined me via video call, her screen showing the joint client statement Javier had helped craft, citing leadership instability as the cause. "This'll crush her," she said, her eyes gleaming. Javier texted, confirming he'd secured campaign analytics revenue breakdowns, client metrics to ensure a seamless transition, and leaked a tip to an ad industry blog, framing the exodus as a crisis of Carla's making. Their coordination was a tapestry, weaving my plan into an unassailable force, but the weight of its impact pressed harder. I stood, pacing the living room, the hardwood cool beneath my feet, the city's buzz a stark contrast to the storm I'd unleashed. The agency was Carla's to lose, but it was mine to halt, a legacy I'd built now teetering by my hand. I sat back down, reviewing the statements, each client's words a testament to my influence. Lisa's, Natalie's vision was our trust, Marcus's, Carla can't deliver her results. The documents were a quiet power, a truth Carla couldn't spin. I finalized the press release with Mia, ensuring it would hit by evening, amplifying the contract termination's impact. The plan was precise, but a memory flickered me team's cheers after a campaign launch, Carla's grin as I'd mentored her, moments I'd cherished. I'd fought for this agency, but they'd chosen her narrative over mine, and that fueled my resolve to strike. I thought of her smug dismissal, the board's complicity, their assumption I'd fade. They'd underestimated me, and that was their fatal flaw. The clock ticked past 3 p.m., my phone buzzing with confirmations, clients ready, statements finalized, leak set. I stood at my window, the skyline a reminder of what I'd built, campaigns launched, brands reshaped, a life of impact. Carla thought she'd erased me at my own party, but I'd pulled the strings of her empire, and by evening, her agency would be halted. My resolve was aflame, unquenched by sorrow. I returned to my desk, my notebook open, jotting notes for a new venture, meetings with clients, a boutique agency to channel their contracts. Mia and Javier's support was a steady hum, their faith in me a foundation stronger than the agency's glass offices. Carla's firing was her choice, my response was her undoing. I closed my laptop, the screen fading, and stood in the quiet, the city's rhythm a heartbeat. My fight wasn't over, but its purpose was clear: to shut it down and rise anew. Some betrayals don't just end a chapter, they hand you the power to pull the plug on the entire show. The city's late afternoon shadows stretched across my apartment, the fading light casting a muted glow over the living room, now cleared of the dossier that had fueled my triumph over Carla's betrayal. Her firing at my promotion party year out, Natalie, had aimed to erase my decade of work and $10 million in campaigns, but my orchestrated pull of $8 million in contracts from Nike, Pepsi, Adobe, and 2 others had halted the agency's operations, leaving it a hollow shell. With Mia and Javier's support, I'd executed a strike that gutted Carla's empire, her client base shattered, the company's financial stability in ruins. Yet, the triumph was bittersweet, shadowed by a quiet sorrow for the agency I'd built, its creative heart now silenced by my hand. I sipped my coffee, its bitterness grounding me, my resolve a steady flame navigating the fallout of her collapse. My phone buzzed with updates, Mia's text first, agencies in chaos. Carla's done. I opened my laptop, the screen glowing with ad industry news, a headline blaring, creative agency loses $8 million in contracts amid leadership crisis. Javier's press leak had landed, framing Carla's mismanagement as the cause, my name absent but my influence undeniable. Social media was ablaze, clients praising my new venture, industry insiders speculating, colleagues posting shocked reactions. The agency was hemorrhaging, its offices likely deserted, a ghost of the powerhouse I'd shaped. I called Mia, my voice even as I processed the fallout client statements citing leadership instability, Carla's frantic calls to Lisa Tran and Marcus Reed, the board's emergency meeting set for tomorrow. She's finished, Mia said, her tone fierce. Javier followed, noting layoffs had begun, the agency's reputation in tatters. Their updates were a lifeline, but a conflict-stirred vindication clashed with guilt. I'd reclaimed my worth, but at the cost of an agency I'd loved, a team now facing uncertainty because of my strike. I scanned the client statements, each a testament to my influence. Lisa's, Natalie's vision drove our success, Marcus's, Carla can't match her results. The agency was crumbling, its foundation cracked, and I'd lit the fuse, but the weight of its ruin pressed hard. I stood, pacing the living room, the hardwood cool beneath my feet, the city's hum a faint pulse beyond the window. I thought of my colleagues, their stunned faces at the party, unaware of Carla's plan, now caught in the fallout. Had I punished them for her ambition? The conflict was raw, a tension between justice and destruction, my legacy versus the empire I'd shaped. I'd fought for this agency, but they'd chosen Carla's narrative, and that fueled my resolve to see this through, to ensure her betrayal was hers alone to bear. I met Mia at a downtown cafe, its air thick with espresso and chatter, to review the aftermath. She slid a tablet across, showing the agency's financials: revenue slashed, loans called in, a bankruptcy risk looming. You broke her empire, she said, her eyes gleaming. She shared Lisa's plan to double her contract with my new venture, Marcus's interest in a new campaign, a signal that my influence endured beyond the agency's ruin. I nodded, but my thoughts drifted to the office, once alive with my team's energy, now likely empty. I'd wanted Carla to face consequences, not to bury the agency I'd built. Mia sensed my hesitation, her voice softening. You didn't break this, Nat. She did. Her words were a quiet power, a reminder that my fight was righteous, but the cost was a team I'd led, now scattered by her folly. By afternoon, Javier sent a bombshell. Carla had been ousted, the board citing catastrophic leadership failure. News outlets reported her exit, the agency's valuation tanked, potential buyers circling like vultures. I stood in my living room, the skyline a stark contrast to the agency's collapse, and let the reality settle. Her empire was gone, the company's dynamics reshaped, and I'd orchestrated it with a truth she couldn't spin. But as I savored the victory, a memory surfaced: me team's laughter during a late-night brainstorm, Carla's nod after a big win, moments I'd cherished. The loss was a faint sting, a reminder that I'd fought for them, but they'd chosen her path. I didn't need their approval anymore, I needed to build, to rise. I sat at my desk, jotting plans for my boutique agencial firm, client-focused, rooted in my vision, with Lisa and Marcus as anchors. The day closed with a call from Javier, confirming 2 more clients had signed with my venture, former agency accounts now bolstering my portfolio. I stood at my window, the city's glow a soft embrace, and felt the tide turning: not just justice, but renewal. My resolve was steady, a flame unquenched by sorrow. I thought of Carla's smug dismissal, the board's silence, their assumption I'd Fidethi'd tried to erase me, but I'd made them see me, feel my absence. The agency was their ruin, but it wasn't my home. I closed my laptop, the screen fading, and stood in the quiet, the city's rhythm a heartbeat. My fight wasn't over, but its purpose had shifted to create, not destroy. Some reckonings don't just end a career, they clear the stage for a legacy you were always meant to claim. The city's dawn light filtered through my apartment's windows, casting a soft glow across the living room, now free of the dossier that had fueled my triumph over Carla's betrayal. Her firing at my promotion party year out, Natalie had aimed to erase my decade of work and $10 million in campaigns, but my orchestrated pull of $8 million in contracts from Nike, Pepsi, Adobe, and 2 others had shattered her agency, leaving it a bankrupt shell. With Mia and Javier's support, I'd halted her empire, her client base gone, her reputation in tatters, reshaping the agency's fate in a single, devastating strike. Yet, the victory was tinged with a quiet sorrow, a lingering ache for the creative hub I'd built, now silent, its team scattered. Now, I turned to forging new horizons, reflecting on the justice served and the path I'd carve. I sipped my coffee, its warmth a steady anchor, my heart a calm forge ready to build a future free from her shadow. I began with purpose, grounding myself in the rhythm of my new venture, Horizon Creative, a boutique agency focused on authentic, client-driven campaigns. Each morning, I sketched strategies in my leased loft office, its open layout a canvas for innovation, envisioning pitches for startups and legacy brands alike. I named it Horizon to mark the new dawn I'd create, a contrast to the agency I'd left in ruins. The work was mine, a declaration of independence from the glass offices I'd once led, now shuttered. But as I drafted proposals, memories surfaced me teams' laughter during a campaign launch, late-night brainstorms, moments I'd cherished. The loss was a faint sting, a conflict between the woman who'd built an empire and the one who'd had to dismantle it. I'd wanted their success, but Carla's betrayal had forced me to choose myself. I pushed the ache aside, focusing on Horizon, a legacy I'd shape one campaign at a time. I met Javier at the loft, its bare walls humming with potential, the scent of fresh paint mingling with our coffee. He slid a tablet across, showing contracts with Lisa Tran at Nike, Marcus Reed at Pepsi, and 3 others, their $9 million in deals fueling Horizon's launch. "You're rebuilding stronger," he said, his eyes bright. His faith was a spark, reinforcing my strength, but I didn't dwell on Carla's ruin. I thanked him, sharing plans for a startup-focused campaign hub mentorship, creative workshops, a space for young talent. His nod was a quiet promise, a bond forged in the fire of my fight. I'd chosen allies who saw my worth, not my absence, and their trust was a quiet power, a foundation for a legacy untainted by Carla's ambition. But doubt lingered. Could I outshine the agency I'd lost, or was I chasing a ghost of past glory? The conflict was a challenge, but I embraced it, drafting a pitch for a green tech startup, a step toward a future I'd define. Mia joined us, her laptop open to market trends demand for authentic branding, a niche Horizon could own. "You're rewriting the game," she said, her voice steady. Her words were a beacon, cutting through the sorrow of my old team's layoffs, the agency's silent offices. I stood in the loft, the whiteboard filling with ideas, and felt a shift, not just victory, but renewal. I didn't want to be defined by Carla's fall, but by what I'd create. I walked through the office, its potential a home I'd reclaimed, and jotted plans for a community arts program, free workshops, local artist showcases, giving back what I'd learned. The act of planning was a spark, a vision of an agency that stood for creativity, not betrayal, rooted in my values, not corporate greed. By afternoon, I scouted a second office site, a riverside studio with open spaces, a canvas for Horizon's growth. The work was exhilarating, but a memory of Carla's nod after a big win, once genuine, flickered, a reminder of the team I'd lost. I didn't need her approval anymore. I needed to rise, to build a legacy that outshone her betrayal. I called Lisa, now a partner in Horizon, to discuss the startup pitch, her voice proud. "You're doing what Carla never could." Her faith was a quiet power, a reminder that my fight was for creation, not just justice. I stood on the studio's balcony, the city stretching beyond, and let the reality settle. Carla's empire was gone, the agency's dynamics reshaped, and I'd orchestrated it with a truth she couldn't deny. As dusk fell, I sat at my desk, my notebook open, plans for Horizon's hub and arts program spilling across the pages. Mia and Javier texted, their support a steady hum, ideas for the startup pitch already sparking. I thought of the agency, now a fading name, and Carla's silence, a lesson she'd carry. Justice wasn't her ruin, it was my rise, a life built on my terms. The conflict was resolved, a quiet strength forged in her betrayal, now a foundation for growth. I lit a candle, its cedar scent soft, and let the stillness envelop me. My path was clear, not defined by her loss, but by what I'd create. My notebook closed, heavy with possibility, and I stood in the quiet, the city's rhythm a heartbeat. Carla's firing was her mistake, Horizon was my answer. Some reckonings don't just end a fight, they light the way for a world you were always meant to shape. The months that followed unfolded slowly, like a sunrise over open skies. Horizon Creative thrived, its hub bustling, the arts program uplifting local talent, each success a thread in a legacy I'd woven. Carla's agency vanished, its offices sold, her name a whisper where mine echoed loud. I didn't seek her remorse or the board's apology, I sought my peace, found in the hum of a vibrant studio, the trust of a team I'd chosen, the joy of a life I'd crafted. Mia and Javier stayed close, their bond a family stronger than corporate ties. I'm not the Natalie who chased approval, who tied her worth to an agency's success. I'm sharper now, forged by betrayal, but not hardened freed. Pain doesn't just wound, it teaches you to build better, to choose yourself. Horizon is my mirror, its impact reflecting my resilience, my rebirth. I stand in the studio's heart, the skyline framing my vision, and feel a calm that runs deep. This isn't the end of my story, but it's the end of hers and mine. I've risen, not as a victim, but as a woman who knows her worth is wherever she creates it. The city glows, the night soft around me, and I am whole,